Welcome to the Giddy Goose Show, where stories come alive. Today we bring to you The Postmaster, a legendary story from the revered Indian author and poet Shri Rabindranath Tagore, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Written in 1891, the story still resonates the necessity and the difficulty of expressing human emotions. Hope you relate to this endearing tale about the unfairness of love and unpredictability of life.
The postmaster took up the duties at his office in the village of Ulapur. Though the village was a small one, there was an indigo factory nearby, and the manager, an Englishman, had arranged to get this post office set up. The postmaster was a young man who belonged to Calcutta. He felt like a fish out of water in this remote village. His office and living room were a dark thatched hut, and not far from there was a green, slimy pond surrounded on all sides by a dense growth. The men employed in the indigo factory had no leisure. Moreover, they would not get along with the city folk, nor was a Calcutta boy an expert in the art of mingling with others. Among strangers, he either appeared too proud or ill at ease. At any rate, the postmaster had but little company, nor he had much work to do. At times, he tried his hand at writing, a verse or two. The movement of the leaves and the clouds of the sky were enough to fill life with joy. Such were the sentiments to which he sought to give expression. But God knows that the poor fellow would have felt it as the gift of a new life if some genie of the Arabian Nights had in one night swept away the trees, leaves and all, and replaced them with a concrete road with rows of tall houses hiding the clouds from view. The postmaster's salary was not much. He had to cook his own meals, which he used to share with Ratan, an orphan girl from the village who did all sorts of odd jobs for him. When in the evening the smoke began to curl up from the village cowsheds and the crickets chirped in every bush, when the mendicants of the Baul sect sang their shrill songs in their daily meeting place, when any poet who had attempted to watch the movement of the leaves in the dense bamboo thickets would have felt a ghostly shiver run down his back, the postmaster would light his little lamp and call out, "Ratan!" Ratan would sit outside waiting for this call, and instead of coming in at once, would reply, "Did you call me, Dada?" "Are you doing something?" the postmaster would ask. "I must be going to light the kitchen fire," would be the answer. And the postmaster would say, "Oh, let the kitchen fire be for a while. Please light my hookah first." At last, Ratan would enter with puffed out cheeks, vigorously blowing a live coal into a flame to light the tobacco. This would give the postmaster an opportunity to converse. "Well, Ratan," he would begin, "do you remember your mother?" That was a fertile subject. Ratan partly remembered and partly didn't. Her father had been fonder of her than her mother. Him she recollected more vividly. He used to come home in the evening after work, and one or two of those evenings stood out more clearly than others, like pictures in her memory. Ratan would sit on the floor near the postmaster's feet, and memories crowded in upon her. She called to mind a little brother that she had, and how on some bygone cloudy day she had played with him on the edge of the pond with a twig for a make-believe fishing rod. Such little incidents would drive out greater events from her mind. So as they talked, it would often get very late, and the postmaster would feel too lazy to do any cooking at all. Ratan would hastily light the fire and toast some unleavened bread, which with the cold remnants of the morning meal was enough for their supper. On some evenings, seated at his desk, in the corner of the big empty hut, the postmaster too would call up memories of his own home, of his mother and his sister, of those for whom his heart was sad in his exile. Memories which were always haunting him, but which he could not talk about with the men at the factory, though he found himself recalling them aloud in the presence of the simple little girl. And so it came about that the little girl would refer to his people as mother, brother, and sister, as if she had known them all her life. In fact, she had a vivid picture of each one of them painted in her little hut. One noon, during a break in the rains, there was a cool, soft breeze blowing. The smell of the damp grass and leaves in the hot sun felt like the warm breathing of the tired earth on one's body. A persistent bird went on all afternoon, repeating the burden of its one complaint in the audience chamber of Mother Nature. The postmaster had nothing to do. The shimmer of the freshly washed leaves and the banked-up remnants of the retreating rain clouds were sights to see. And the postmaster was watching them and thinking to himself, if only some kindred soul were near, just one loving human being whom I could hold near my heart. He went on to think, this was exactly what the bird was trying to say. And it was the same feeling which the murmuring leaves were striving to express. But no one knows or would believe that such an idea might also take possession of an ill-paid village postmaster in the deep, silent midday interval of his work. The postmaster sighed and called out, "Ratan!" Ratan was then sprawling beneath the guava tree, busily engaged in eating unripe guavas. At the voice of her master, she ran up breathlessly, saying, "Were you calling me, Dada?" "I was thinking," said the postmaster, "of teaching you to read." And then, for the rest of the afternoon, he taught her the alphabet. In a very short time, Ratan had gotten as far as the double consonants. It seemed as though the showers of the season would never end. Canals, ditches, and hollows were overflowing with water. The patter of rain was heard day and night, and the croaking of frogs. The village roads became impassable, and even visiting the shops had to be done in punts. One heavily clouded morning, the postmaster's little pupil had been long waiting outside the door for her call. But not hearing it as usual, she took up her dog-eared book and slowly entered the room. She found her master stretched out on his bed, and thinking he was resting, she was about to retire on tiptoe, when suddenly she heard her name. "Ratan?" She turned around at once and asked, "Were you sleeping, Dada?" The postmaster in a plaintive voice said, "I am not well. Feel my head? Is it very hot?" In the loneliness of his exile and in the gloom of the rains, his ailing body needed nursing. He longed to remember the touch on his forehead of soft hands with tinkling bracelets, to imagine the presence of loving womanhood and the nearness of his mother and sister. And he was not disappointed. In that room, Ratan ceased to be a little girl. She at once stepped into the role of a mother, called in the village doctor, gave the patient his pills at proper intervals, sat up all night by his pillow, cooked his gruel for him, and every now and then asked, "Dada, are you feeling a little better?" It was some time before the postmaster, with a weakened body, was able to leave his sickbed. No more of this. He had made a decision. I must get a transfer. He at once wrote off an application for a transfer on the grounds of the unhealthiness of the place. Relieved from her duties as a nurse, Ratan took up her old place outside the door again. But she no longer heard the old call. Sometimes she would peep inside furtively to find the postmaster seated on his chair, staring absent-mindedly into the air. While Ratan was awaiting her call, the postmaster was awaiting a reply to his application. The girl read her old lessons over and over again. Her great fear was lest when the call came, she might be found wanting in the double consonants. At last, after a week, the call did come one evening. With overflowing heart, Ratan rushed into the room with her. "Were you calling me, Dada?" The postmaster said, "Ratan, I'm going away tomorrow." "Where are you going, Dada?" "I'm going home." "When will you come back?" "I am not coming back." Ratan didn't ask any other question. The postmaster, of his own accord, went on to tell her that his application for a transfer had been rejected. So he had resigned his post and was going home. For a long time, neither of them spoke another word. The lamp went on burning dimly, and from a leak in one corner of the thatch, water dripped steadily into an earthen vessel on the floor beneath it. After a while, Ratan rose and went off to the kitchen to prepare the meal. But she was not as quick about it as on other days. Many new things to think of had entered her little brain. When the postmaster had finished his supper, the girl suddenly asked him, "Dada, will you take me with you?" The postmaster laughed. "What an absurd idea," he said. But he did not think it necessary to explain to the orphan girl wherein lay the absurdity. The whole night, in her waking and in her dreams, the postmaster's laughing reply haunted her. What an absurd idea. On getting up in the morning, the postmaster found his bath ready. He had stuck to his Calcutta habit of bathing in water drawn and kept in pitchers, instead of taking a plunge in the river as was the custom of the village. For some reason or the other, the girl could not ask him about the time of his departure, so she had fetched the water from the river long before sunrise, so it would be ready as early as he might want it. After the bath came the call for Ratan. She entered noiselessly and looked silently into her master's face for orders. The master said, "You need not be anxious about me going away, Ratan. I shall tell my successor to look after you." These words were meant kindly, no doubt, but inscrutable are the ways of a woman's heart. Ratan had borne many a scolding from her master without complaint, but these kind words she could not bear. She burst out weeping and said, No, you need not tell anybody anything about me at all. I don't want to stay on here." The postmaster was dumbfounded. He had never seen Ratan like this before. The new postmaster duly arrived, and the old postmaster, having given over charge, prepared to depart. Just before starting, he called Ratan and said, "Here's something for you. I hope it will keep you for some time." From his pocket, he brought out the whole of his month's salary, retaining only a trifle for his travelling expenses. Ratan fell at his feet and cried, "Oh, Dada, I pray you, don't give me anything and don't in any way worry about me." And then she ran away, out of sight. The postmaster heaved a sigh, took up his carpet bag, put his umbrella over his shoulder and, accompanied by a man carrying his many-coloured tin trunk, he slowly made for the boat. When he got in, and the boat was underway, and the rain-swollen river, like a stream of tears welling up from the earth, swirled and sobbed at her bows, he felt a pain at heart. The grief-stricken face of a village girl seemed to represent for him the great unspoken, pervading grief of Mother Earth herself. At one time, he had the impulse to go back and bring away along with him that lonesome, abandoned girl, forsaken by the world. But the wind had just filled the sails. The boat had gotten well into the middle of the turbulent current, and the village was already left behind, its outlying cremation ground coming into sight. So the traveller, borne abreast the swift-flowing river, consoled himself with philosophical reflections on the numberless meetings and partings going on in the world, on death, the great parting from which no one returns. But Ratan had no philosophy. She was wandering about the post office in a flood of tears. It may be that she still had a lurking hope in some corner of her heart that her Dada would return. And that is why she could not tear herself away. Alas for our foolish human nature, its fond mistakes are persistent. The dictates of reason take a long time to assert their own sway. The surest proofs, meanwhile, are disbelieved. False hope is clung to with all one's might till a day comes when it has sucked the heart dry and it forcibly breaks through its bonds and departs. After that comes the misery of awakening, and then, once again, the longing to get back into the maze of the same mistakes.
Hope you liked the story. If yes, tell your friends about us and stay tuned for the next episode. Until then, stay well.